Our next discussion, I would like to welcome Venerable Bhante Suddhaso and Venerable Ayya Soma to explore the topic of shattering the mirage of self, a practical guide to embodying Anatta. Ayya Soma is an Italian Buddhist monk and co-abbot of Empty Cloud Monastery in New Jersey. She's a former fashion and lifestyle editor. She began renunciation in 2016, took ordination in 2018, and full bhikkhuni ordination in 2020. She co-founded Buddhist Insights to connect people with monastics and across the different traditions. Bhante Suddhaso is the other co-founder of Buddhist Insights. He is a practitioner of both the Theravada and Mahayana Buddhism, with a particular emphasis on the teachings found in the Pali Suttas and the Zen methods. In 2019, together with Ayya Soma, he co-founded Empty Cloud Monastery in New Jersey, where he currently resides as co-abbot. Please join me in welcoming Venerable Bhante Suddhaso and Venerable Ayya Soma.
We'll start with homage to the Buddha. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa.
Namo Buddhaya. Well, first and foremost, I would like to thank all the friends from the Metta Center for organizing this beautiful event and for inviting us here. And also thank you for that really flattering introduction. The reality is I'm just a monastic, just a mendicant. The introduction sounded very flattering, and also actually the subject of the topic that we're about to talk right now is actually a pretty lofty topic. So anatta, right? Non-self, very, very crucial, very, very important topic that I feel completely inadequate to talk about. Especially as a junior monastic, right? It's very young monastic. I feel I have a lot more stories of unenlightenment than of enlightenment. So perhaps instead of talking about actually how to shatter the mirage of the self, I will share a few words on how to get entangled in the mirage of self, which I'm an expert at. So in particular, these past 2 years, I had to return to my home country in Italy because my dad passed away and my mom got dementia. And so my parents had 3 children and I'm one of them, and I was the only one unemployed. So I decided to go back to my country and try to do my best to take care of the situation. And so my mom, got this after about 80 years of really good health. She just out of the blue, as these things happen, she got diagnosed with dementia, and it's a tragicomic, actually, disease. So it's a disease that affects memory and affects, it's neurodegenerative. So there is lots of different implications. So anyway, she actually kind of remembers pretty much everyone except for me. And so I started taking care of her. I was her caregiver full-time for a period of time. And she was in a pretty bad shape, actually. She wasn't sleeping at all. I don't know how she was, even alive, because I tried to not sleep at all with her. And I was, wow, after 2 days, I was knocked out, but she just kept going. And it was a very interesting time, actually, when I was doing this practice, which I did for about like 2 months together with another friend. So once again, my mom wasn't sleeping, going to the bathroom about like 3 times every hour. And she was in a really, really bad mood all the time, especially with this one, who she didn't quite know who it was, except she knew I was kind of familiar and we were related. And she didn't like me. But she really liked my brothers who weren't there. Her really lovely, delightful, sorry, not brothers, sons, my brothers, right? And so she was talking about how great they were and how, full of wholesome qualities and so delightful. The daughter, she had completely forgotten, even though she was in front of her, like, cleaning and taking care of her 24/7. And I have to say that no matter how much, I love the Buddhist teachings and how much I was like, yeah, this is not me, this is not my, don't take it personal. Woof. I was like, I'm not looking, for gratitude, but at least don't insult me. Right? It's like a little painful right there. And so these thoughts started appearing in the mind. Why me? Why did this happen to me? Also, I'm kind of like still young enough to actually like be practicing, and I can't go on retreat. I'm here 24/7. This is awful. What have I done in the past? What's happening to me now? How am I ever going to get enlightened in the future? Sounds familiar? And that's actually in the Suddhaso Sutta, basically what not to do. Right? And so this is how we get entangled. Me, myself and I. Right? And so what does the Buddha instead encourage us to do is to go back to, right? How do we transcend these asavas? How do we transcend these influences? By seeing properly. So this is a deficiency of view whenever we get these thoughts. So we have to go back to the Four Noble Truths. This is suffering. This is the cause of suffering. This is the end of suffering. And this is the way out of suffering. So as Venerable Bhikkhu Bodhi, this really amazing monastic, had told me back in the day when I was studying with him, we don't practice despite the obstacles, but the obstacles are the path. And so when we find ourselves in these really like entangled, unenlightened situations where the worst of us is coming out, then we have the opportunity of actually really looking at the first and the second noble truth. This is suffering, and this is the cause of suffering. And then luckily, then we have a glimpse into there is an end of suffering, and then we have to practice the way out of suffering. And so then when we remind ourselves of these teachings, then, actually we can create a little bit of opening, right? So at a certain point, practical thing that I started doing was actually like joining pretty much every group that had to do with dementia and Alzheimer's, like these sort of online groups that can be very effective actually in this day and age. And I remember wow, I entered the one from Italy and then the one from the United States and then the global one. And it was so interesting how this experience of with my mom or with my family, that seemed so particular to me, so specific, that was only happening to me. Then I realized it was happening in the same shape and form everywhere to every single person who was dealing with that disease, including the patient. Like every single patient that has Alzheimer's or dementia worldwide, they all say the same thing. At a certain point, they go, I want to go home, even though they're at home. And you're like, what's wrong with you? Well, many things are wrong with you. You're home. Why are you saying that you want to go home? So it doesn't matter if the person is Italian or from the United States or in Australia or Thailand or India, it doesn't matter. They will say, I want to go home. What does it mean? Clear, it doesn't mean I want to go to a physical space that is the house I was raised or whatever. It actually means they want to go back to a place where they feel safe, where they feel comfortable, where they feel themselves. And the people that are relating to these patients that can be quite unreasonable and angry, they all feel the same sort of emotional inadequacy and difficulty, and also a lot of families that start exploding, because pretty much everybody also who's not taking care of the patients tells the caregiver what to do and how everything they're doing is not correct, right? So it creates all of these different dynamics. And it was so interesting to read all of that, because at a certain point I remember having this thought like, oh, wow, it's like such a common experience. It's not really who I am. This is not mine. This is not myself. It's just whenever these conditions happen, this is the result, right? We have this saying in Italian that goes mal comune mezzo gaudio, which means if it's a common like suffering, it's a half happiness. And this was really true, because by seeing how this suffering wasn't unique to myself, it was kind of like a half happiness, because I could put it there a little bit on the side, right? Not hold it so tightly, not feel so sorry for myself. And then this space created more space to actually practice the Dhamma, right? To actually go and see, whenever I really want to be acknowledged, for example, by my mother or by my brothers or by whomever, right? That feels so painful. But whenever I'm actually just practicing compassion, practicing caregiving, actually, there's no regret in my heart. If my mom could die right now, I would feel no regret. That feels good. That's great. Doesn't matter whether someone is telling me that I'm doing a good thing or they're telling me I'm doing a bad thing. But this heart, right, the sort of impersonality of the effects of these actions, like, So we start a little bit eroding, maybe perhaps not shattering this mirage. There's still like, this unenlightened being that we have to deal with. But it's a little less sticky. It's a little less heavy. It's a little less like, this burden, hard. That's what dukkha is, right? It's difficult to bear. So it's a little bit easier to bear. And so we can see how we can really see exactly what we're doing. We're really seeing suffering, right? The Buddha tells us suffering needs to be understood, not pretending that it doesn't exist, not kind of escaping from it, not pretending, oh, I'm a monastic, I've got these robes on, I'm supposed to be already a holy being. No, but actually going, yeah, I'm a vulnerable. This is what a monastic means, that we actually really understand that we're really unenlightened and we really need a lot of precepts in order to discipline this mind and heart and like get it together, right? So it's important that instead of, spiritually bypassing ourselves and others whenever we are encountering dukkha, that we actually stay with it, understand what it is, but at the same time also not spiritually bypass the Dhamma. So understand that actually whatever we're doing is unwholesome, but it's good news. We know actually how to deal with it and how to get out of it. So these are a few words on Anatta. Pass it on to Bhante.
Okay, well, thank you, Ayya Soma, for those words on the subject. And thank you to Tina and Zen and all the other volunteers at Metta Center for inviting us here and making all of this happen. And actually, my first thought on Anatta came up while they were reading out the brief descriptions of the two of us. And I was listening to it and I was like, oh, that's actually a description of someone who no longer exists. I was listening to this description of Bhante Suddhaso and I was like, a few years ago, that might have been more accurate. So there's a few minor details, like for example, I live in Italy, not the United States, and so on. But more is just reflecting that whenever there's a story of me, it's always out of date. And this is always true. Like whenever you're telling yourself a story about yourself, it's actually a story about somebody who no longer exists. So this is a very important way of starting to approach non-self. And actually, if we look at the Pali Suttas, there's a couple different ways that the Buddha approaches non-self. And I'm talking here not in a doctrinal sense, but rather in a practical way. Like how do we actually feel and experience the truth of anatta, the truth that nothing whatsoever is me or mine? How do we actually begin to feel and experience that? And there's a few ways that the Buddha approaches it, but one of the most common ways is through the observation of change, that everything is always changing, nothing is persistent, nothing is stable. So this also applies to our self-identity. Who do we think we are? More interestingly, who did you think you were 10 years ago? What was your identity 10, 20, 30 years ago? And is it exactly the same as it is now? And the answer is invariably no. Does anybody here, by the way, do you actually think your self-identity now is exactly the same as 10 years ago? Anyone? No? Great. Then you have your first glimpse of non-self. It's recognizing that whoever we thought we were 10 years ago clearly wasn't who we are, because that's changed, it's gone. So then looking at our current self-identity, why do we believe so strongly that our current self-identity is accurate? Every single self-identity we've had throughout our entire life was wrong. Why do we think the current one is somehow different? Why do we think our current self-identity is the correct one when the previous 10 million were wrong? Somebody's getting the point, which I'm very happy to hear. So one person understands. The rest, well, we'll see. So then one way of approaching this is to start by asking, who do I think I am? Or what do I think I am? And this already is important, because actually if you ask, who am I or what am I, that's actually already a slightly dangerous approach, because that's already presupposing a me. It's already presupposing an I that we're trying to find. But actually, who do I think I am? This is a little bit better, because it's recognizing that it's just a concept. One thing I find very interesting is one of the words that the Buddha uses for our distorted sense of self. In Pali, the word is mana, and mana is often translated into English as conceit, which is actually not quite accurate. The word mana literally means concept or idea. So mana is our self-concept, our concept of who we think we are, the idea that we have about ourselves. And that's already wrong. No matter what our concept or idea is, that's already incorrect. It's already inaccurate, because it's just an idea. It's not the reality of things. So first asking, who do we think we are? What do we think we are? And you can start making a list of adjectives if you want, that's fine. And then ask yourself, is that really who I am? Is that really a permanent, stable, eternal description of my true self? Is there anything whatsoever on that list which can't change? So you might start making a list like, okay, I am 39 years old. Well, how long is that going to last? Less than a year. So clearly not your true self. Cross that one off. I am human. Well, maybe this time around you are. That probably wasn't true in your previous life. It probably won't be true in the next one. Cross that one off. I am male. Well, are you? Or you might write, I am female, or you might write something else. Well, again, that might seem true right now. That might have not seemed so true a few years ago, a few decades ago, a few lifetimes ago. Similarly, it might not be so true next lifetime or even tomorrow for that matter. So it's just a temporary identity. And even in the present moment, it's just an idea, it's just a concept. It's not necessarily true. Or you might think I am smart, or I am stupid, or I am clever, or I'm foolish, or I'm liked, or I'm disliked. Well, these are all just concepts and ideas. And all of these are just inaccurate descriptions of temporary experiences. So you put together a picture of who you think you are, and you start breaking it down bit by bit. And pretty quickly you'll find out none of that is actually who you are. We can't actually pin down a clear description of self. We can only ever come up with temporary adjectives, temporary descriptions, which don't actually define who we are. They're just momentary experiences. So in this way, we can start to see that whatever we think we are is not actually who we are. So then the search for self is actually utterly futile because there's nothing to be found. And this is incredibly relieving. So this is one of the things which I find very interesting, is that often when people start to approach the concept of non-self, they find it scary or disturbing or terrifying. I hear people saying things like, oh, I like everything about Buddhism except for that whole thing about you don't exist. Like that part's really disturbing. I don't like that part. And it's like, well, actually, that's the most relieving aspect of Buddhism. We don't have to take anything whatsoever personally, as Ayya Soma was saying. Nothing's personal. All we're ever doing is observing the consequences of particular conditions coming together. None of this is personal. None of it needs to be taken personally. None of it is something which we need to hold on to or identify with. So if there is no self, then nothing whatsoever can target you. Nothing whatsoever can be a personal attack because there is no person to attack. Nothing whatsoever can be disturbing or bothering to us because there is no us to be disturbed or bothered by anything. So a simple example, if somebody insults your clothing, are they insulting you? Of course not. It's just something that you're wearing right now. If you change your clothes, well, clearly that's not who you are. If they insult where you live, well, you move to a different place. Well, clearly it's not insulting you. It's just insulting an experience that you used to have at some point in the past. Well, it's actually the same with absolutely everything. Who is dukkha happening to? That's not happening to any person in particular. It's just happening to a particular body-mind experience, which lasts for only a fraction of a second, and it's gone. It's not happening to you. It's just something which we are capable of observing. And through that observation, again, as Ayya Soma was pointing out, through that observation, we can start to understand the process. We can start to understand the causal process through which suffering arises. Whenever we have a sense of self, then we create a target for suffering. And the more we reduce and diminish our sense of self, the less space there is for suffering to land. Now, the less surface there is for suffering to appear. So these are a few general thoughts to approach the topic. So again, through observing the temporary, non-persistent, impermanent nature of everything that we identify as me or mine, then we start to open up to this vast spaciousness of invincibility. The invincibility of knowing that nothing whatsoever has the ability to disturb us or bother us or cause pain to us. So we're coming towards the end of our time together this morning. So I think I might pass the mic back to Ayya Soma for some final words on the topic of non-self. So I think that'll be it for now from me.
I actually have no idea how much time we have left. 5 minutes. Okay, then maybe if there is a question or comment. No questions, no comments. Everybody's hungry. Please.
Is this work? Yeah. I've had experiences where I felt, I don't want to sound arrogant, felt no sense of self, or that felt lost in a way that felt like I didn't know who I was. And it is not felt empowering. It's felt maybe anxiety, depression, and felt very suffering, like a lot of suffering associated with it, as rather than being the kind of empowering experience you've described. And I'm aware of a lot of this philosophy, but in bringing it into my being as something that is a source of comfort or bliss or whatever it might be, or just safety, I don't know. Invincibility was the word you used. So I'm, respond please.
Well, what you've described was not an experience of non-self. That was the self-identity. I am the person who doesn't know who they are, which is why there's a target for suffering to land. So what you've described is not the mind of wisdom, which clearly sees the impersonal nature of all things. You've described a loss of clarity, a loss of awareness, which is the polar opposite of what the Buddha is talking about. So that's why you didn't experience the sense of safety and ease that I'm talking about. So again, I really encourage approaching non-self through the lens of impermanence. So impermanence is realizing that you're in free fall, but there's no ground beneath you. So you can fall in safety knowing that you're never going to hit a hard surface at the bottom because there is no bottom. So it's just relaxing into that experience of free fall. And as you do that, then you can start to gradually drop away the things that we're holding on to, because it's realizing we don't need them. So we don't need those fragments of self-identity that we've been holding on to. They don't do us any good. All they do is make things more painful. So yeah, that sense of I don't know who I am, well, that's just another self-identity. Drop that as well.